So now we know that Winston had every reason to be doubtful of your story in that first scene, by the way. Okay, so how did Jordan explain this movie to you in his first conversation with you about it, or did he just give you the script?
Jordan went the official route. He sent the script to my agents, and my agent sent it to me with saying this is an offer. But I had met him a year before, and he'd flirted about it. He'd said we'd met in just a general, just getting to know you lunch, and he mentioned that he was writing something that I may or may not be right for.
Oh.
And I don't remember much more than that. And then I got the script through my agent, and I read it, and of course, I was gonna say yes, because it was Jordan Peele.
Right.
But I read it, because I should do that before I say yes to things. And then I saw, not only am I gonna get to work with Jordan once, I get to work with him twice, and I get to play two characters, and it was such Jordan writes, his writing is you can tell there's more than meets the eye. And there's references in it, he pays homage to the genre and to cinema. And so there's references, you always know there's just more than you're seeing the first time. And I was so uneasy reading it the first time, so much coming at me. And I had actually never read a horror script before. And so this was my first go at it, and I was actually quite terrified just reading it. And then I had a conversation with him where he expounded on what it was about and talked about, what this is a critical look at class dynamics, and told me a little bit more about this world that he was creating, the rules of this world, and I was mesmerized by the detail, of his imagination and of his intentions.
How was Red's voice described in the script?
It said that she hadn't used her voice for a while. And I mean, the only way I can talk about this is by spoiling it for people.
Yeah, the movie came out a year ago, people.
So too bad.
Right.
But, so I was really intrigued by that. I mean, because I knew that Adelaide was Red and Red was Adelaide, sorry. I knew that Red had experienced a trauma when she was younger because of and so I was inspired by those two details, the fact that there'd been this strangulation, and then she hadn't used her voice for a long time. So I thought, what if there was a way to represent her trauma through how she spoke? And that's where I started building her voice.
And where and when and how did you basically audition that voice for Jordan?
It was, I hadn't shared it with him at all until a week before we started filming, when my accent coach, who was helping me with it, said, "You might want to share it with him." And I was really nervous, because it wasn't yet fully formed yet either. It was still in flux. But at that point, Jordan and I had developed such a trust with each other that I knew I could, that he tells you the truth also, but he's got such empathy, and he's so compassionate that he'll basically insult you and you won't even realize it because it's so warm, right? So I knew that I was safe. I knew that my ego was safe auditioning it for him. And, he listened to it and he was silent for a moment. And then he said, "Wow, that's powerful." And then he gave me some notes, of course, as he should. And then I went back to work to perfect it. But he really liked it. And he really embraced everything I put on the table, which, I'm just forever grateful to have that kind of, relationship, that kind of collaboration.
And as I understand it, on the set, when you were Adelaide and there were scenes where Adelaide is with Red in the same room, he was doing
Red. Yes.
How great that you have a director who's also a great voice artist, a great actor.
Yeah. So the first time I was going to be doing Adelaide, the first scene where Adelaide and Red talk to each other or have their moment together, he gave me 3 options. He was like, I can either do playback where you hear your own performance, I can have someone else read it, or I could read it for you. And I chose option C because I definitely didn't want to perform to my own performance, because I'm very self-critical. And who else? I mean, you have a perfectly good actor for a director, he should do it. And I was a little nervous that it would be funny, because Jordan has a way of being funny, but he really, and he didn't mimic me. He did like his own interpretation of it, which was fascinating and so helpful to me, because then I could just rest and do my bit as Adelaide in those moments,
I want to hear Jordan as Red a little bit later in the night. Maybe he'll do it for us. I love doing Red. I'm not going to do it, but I love doing Red. It's my favorite. Once upon a time.
That's pretty good.
There was a girl. Anyway,
that's pretty good.
It's awful. The best thing to do is to watch us after you've seen it, to go back and see all the stuff that you did that we didn't pick up on the first time. The face that you make when you're driving into Santa Cruz, when you think more about the fact that you had the chance to kill the young girl but didn't. There's all these things, and it made me think, what kind of conversations did you and Jordan have to make sure that you were dropping clues, Easter eggs for people who are seeing it repeatedly, but not giving anything away?
Yeah, that's why I think it's so great to have a close relationship and an open relationship with a director like Jordan, because he really did welcome me into his process, because the script was evolving as we went along as well, and we were both gaining clarity. He really entrusted me with my character. He trusted me to be the expert on my characters and to illuminate things for him that he would then go and and would inform how he adjusted things and stuff like that. So it was very much a give and take relationship. And of course, I knew, having seen Get Out, that his style, his way his intention is for his films to be seen more than once. And I so loved that in Get Out, how much you gain from seeing it 3-4 times. I mean, it's just a gift that keeps giving, right?
Us is the same way.
And so I knew that was something that was important, and he also communicated that. And then he really trusted me to devise those things, and we did it together, So we had shorthand of we'd do a scene, and sometimes I would do it at different temperatures, because I had to play these characters, and this was one of the things I had to really clarify for myself. Playing these characters was like planning a blueprint for a building, where you have to do your sketches and everything has to be scientifically sound before you lay the first brick, And so I knew I was playing 2 characters, and then I had the added challenge of of them being not who you think they are. So I was playing 2 characters who were actually the opposite from how you meet them, which was a mind fuck. And so what I did, but in order to organize it for myself, I had to always play Red as Adelaide and Adelaide as Red.
Right.
I had to play their truth, because they're not hiding their truth from each other. So I had to do that. But then, as a craftsman, or craftswoman, I had to ensure that the audience didn't know too soon what my character's truth was. So that's where the real kind of scientific devising came. So Jordan and I would, sometimes I would do a scene in different temperatures, and then we'd have a conversation. It's like, wasn't it too much? Like, would you pull it back or give it a little more? And then he had some options, of course, in the editing room, and could make the decisions.
One last thing that I just have to ask before we bring out Jordan. Recently, so about 6 months after the movie came out, you had the opportunity to reprise the role of Red in the Universal Studios Hollywood Horror Nights or Haunted Horror Nights maze, the Us maze.
Yeah.
And you did it. You went back in character to freak the crap out of people. What was the best part of doing that and seeing people's reactions for the people who did realize it was you and the people who didn't realize it was you?
Well, the thing about shooting Us, I was so fed up of that red jumpsuit by the time we were done shooting. I said to Jordan, I will never don this jumpsuit ever again, and mark my words. And he kind of just grinned at me like he knew better than I did. And then not long after that, during the promotion of it, Trevor Noah had a bit on his show, and he asked me to don it, and I did it. In spite of myself, I did it. But I was like, oh, God, it's Trevor Noah, I'll do it. And then months later, this opportunity comes along, and it was my idea. And I was talking to Jordan because we were talking about the maze and, casting for it or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is so cool, because I never imagined this would happen. This was not, a given. I didn't even know Horror Nights happened, And I was like, wow, they're going to be amazing. People are going to walk through. That's amazing. What if I showed up in the red jumpsuit and I scared everybody? And he was like, Lupita, you realize if you say that, they're going to make it happen. I was like, yeah, that would be fun. He was like, I told you to wear the jumpsuit again. And it's because I really love the work we did together, and I love the characters that Jordan offered me to play and what became of them. He just offered me an opportunity to be so wild and bold and imaginative and risky, and those kinds of opportunities. Just otherworldly don't happen very often. And so, to answer your question. What was the funnest part? The funnest part was going through the maze with my family. I went with my mom and my two sisters, and they are such chickens. But unfortunately, when you're with people who are more scared than you get scareder.
Yeah, sure.
So I was, I wanted to be stronger than I appeared in the thing. But it was also so much fun because there was just fits of laughter when I went through, and then when I did the costume myself, it was ridiculous, and it was nice to be in a low stakes situation with that costume where not everything depends on my performance. But what was frustrating is the number of people who went through that horror house to prove they wouldn't be scared, right?
Oh, right.
Those were the bummers. Right? It's like, come on, man. I'm working so hard here, and you're giving me nothing, right. And lots of them didn't recognize me. So it was like, oh, man, I'm working double time, But then there was a few that did, and it was fun to see them freak out and then try to negotiate. How do I handle this moment? So anyway, I had a wonderful time. I'm glad I did it.
I'm so glad you did, and I love that it was your idea. That's the best thing.